All right, so we're going to be talking about the Pythagorean Theorem. So the first thing we're going to do is just kind of review the parts of a triangle. Okay, so let's go over a right triangle. So a right triangle is a triangle that contains a right angle. So normally you'll see right angles where here. See how this looks like a pretty nice little block there? So we draw a thing to make it look like a square. So in that corner, this normally tells you that it's a right angle, this little symbol here. Okay, so most of the time you'll see that if it's a right angle, but also you'll be able to tell because it has that nice distinctive corner there. It's got a really distinctive corner. Whereas if you look at these ones, they're not as sharp or as distinctive. Okay, so let's talk about some definitions. So the longest side of a triangle is called the hypotenuse. So hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. Okay, so this is your hypotenuse. It's the longest side of the triangle. And it's always across from the right angle, or it's always opposite the right angle. I just wrote right again twice. Right angle. Okay. The other two sides, the shorter sides are called the legs. These are the legs. Legs. Okay. So let's look at the next part. These couple, I'm just going to kind of say, and hopefully you'll do it as I'm saying. So please circle the right angles. So let's look at these. I see some with some distinctive corners, right? So circle the ones that look like right angles. So it's this one and this one because they have those distinctive corners. Whereas this one in the middle doesn't have any distinctive corners. So it's not a right angle. Okay, so first these are labeled the legs and the hypotenuse of each right angle. So first thing we need to figure out is the right angle is in this corner. And remember, the hypotenuse is right across from that. So that's the hypotenuse, which means that these two are your legs. All right, so take a moment and do that for the next two. So figure out where your right angle is, find your hypotenuse, find your legs. So make sure you pause when you do this and then unpause in a moment. All right, so check yours against mine. All right, so hopefully that was pretty easy. Let's go to the next page. So we reviewed some. So let's go to talking about the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay, so let's go to the next page, this B1. So just reviewing some things. A theorem, so I'm reading this one, reading this. A theorem is a mathematical statement that can be proven true using other statements that have already been proven true. So pretty much, if you ever go into like a really high math class, you're going to prove that the Pythagorean theorem is a theorem and why it is. It's just something that mathematicians have already proven that it works for every single case as long as you apply it correctly. So it was discovered and proven by a Greek philosopher named Pythagoras. Hence why it's the Pythagorean theorem. It states that any right triangle, the sum of the square of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. Okay, that was a lot. So we'll, go down for that in a moment. We generally use the Pythagorean theorem to find missing or unknown sides of a right triangle. The Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. It won't work on any other types of triangles. It only works for right triangles. That's super important. I might star that, circle it, underline it. Okay, it only works on right triangles. Okay, everything else it won't work. So this diagram breaks it down for us. So where it said the Pythagorean theorem states, where it says this right here, that's what this is. This is saying the sum, which means adding the two sides squared, equals the length of the hypotenuse squared. Okay, so let's look at this diagram. So A and B are your two legs, and C is your hypotenuse. So pretty much we're just going to plug in numbers and solve for this formula. It's really all we're going to do. So that's a really helpful diagram. Again, A stands for a leg, A stands for leg, B stands for a leg, C stands for the hypotenuse. What is really helpful, as it says down here, is that when you're finding the missing side, first label each side with the letters A, B, and C. So we always want to label first, that way we don't get confused when we're plugging it into the formula. All right, so let's talk about this. Circle which statement is true. So I want you to pause and circle which statement is true, okay? All right, so hopefully you said C. C is the right answer. C is the right answer. Can only be used to find the missing side of a right triangle. A right triangle. It's really important. All right, so let's look at this number 2. So it says on the right triangles below, so it tells you they're all right triangles. Label the legs and hypotenuse using the letters A, B, and C. So remember, A and B are legs, and C is your hypotenuse. Remember how we find our hypotenuse? It's by finding our right angle first and then drawing across that. So that's our C. And then the other two are our legs, so that's A and B. It doesn't matter which one you label A or B. It could have been, vice versa. Whichever one floats your goat. Okay? So one more time together, we're going to find the right angle. Opposite that is your hypotenuse. The other two are your legs. All right? Pause this and do the last one for me. All right, so hopefully you got that one on the bottom is the C and the other two are A and B. Again, it doesn't matter which order. All right, so let's go to the next page now. All right, so looking at the next page, I want you to answer 3, 4, and 5 for me. Answer 3, 4, and 5. So pause this and answer those for me. All right, so hopefully you filled those out. For 3, no, it doesn't matter which one is A or which one is B, so nope for both of them. 4, yes, it does matter. And it needs to be the longest side that's also directly opposite the right angle. And number 5, this last one should have been the one that was properly labeled. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too confusing because we're just going to keep on going. All right, so let's first talk about using the Pythagorean theorem to find the hypotenuse. So we're going to start there, finding the hypotenuse, okay? So you always want to remember to use PEMDAS. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, PEMDAS. So you always do exponents, that's the E, exponents, before you do adding or subtracting. Okay, so we're going to be solving equations here. So let's first start by labeling our right triangle. Let's first start by labeling. Okay, so we have our right angle here, which means that this is C. And again, it doesn't matter which one you label as A or B. I'm going to go A and then B. Now, if you look back to that other page, it told us the formula for the Pythagorean theorem. It's A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, so now we've labeled A, B, and C on our triangle. So now we just need to plug those in. Okay, so A is 14 squared. B was 17 squared equals C we don't have. So we're going to leave it as c squared. So this is going to be where you need a calculator at. So if you don't have a calculator, pause this video and go get one. Okay, so pause it now, go get a calculator. So remember before we said 14 squared was the same thing as 14 times 14. So do 14 squared on your calculator. You should get 196. Now do 17 squared. You should get 289. And we add those together, and that's equal to c squared. Okay, so now we have to add 289 plus 196. When you do that, you should get 485 equals c squared. Now this is the new part of solving an equation, because we've never had something that has a square here. So we've never had something that has a square there. So that square tells me there's two c's, right? There's two c's, just like where we did 14 times 14. So the opposite of a square is something called a square root. So in order to get rid of this 2, we have to square root both sides. That gives me c alone. And then we have to do the square root of 485. So to do the square root on your calculator, you do second, and then on the blue ones, or the normal ones, it's second, and then the button that's x squared, right next to the 7, okay? So you do second square root, and then type in 485, and hit enter. When you do this, you'll get a really long decimal, right? So we're just going to round that to the 100th because that's what it says to do. So c is equal to 22.02. And then we always label meters. All right, so that's how we do it. So let's do another one. Let's do another one together. So I'm going to label my square root. And not my square root, sorry, my right angle, and this is c. Again, my a and b, doesn't matter what order they're in. So we always write our formula first. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then we plug in what we have. We have 5 squared plus 12 squared equals our unknown c squared. Now in your calculator, do 5 squared, which is 25, plus 12 squared, which is 144, equals our c squared. Add those up, so 144 plus 25 gives us 169, equals c squared. Now again, once we are left to this step, we have that 2 we need to get rid of. We square root it. Square root both sides. And you get c is equal to what? What is the square root of 169? It is 13. And don't forget to label 13 feet. All right. So let's look at the next 2. I am going to start you off on the next one. So we're going to start by finding the right angle and labeling C, A, and B. Now that you have that, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to do this one and this one. Okay, I want you to try those 2 for me. So pause the video and try those. All right, so just to check in on this first one, hopefully you got 10.82. Okay, 10.82 is what you should have gotten. And then hopefully you got around to labeling the second one. And then just remember it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, so pause and keep on going. All right, so hopefully on this last one, you got 17.2 or 17.20 kilometers. All right, so we're just going to keep on checking, and hopefully this isn't too much for you, because we have a little bit harder of stuff to get through. So let's go to the next page. The next page for me. All right, so we were just doing the Pythagorean Theorem to find the missing hypotenuse. But now we're going to be missing a leg, okay? So now we're going to be missing a leg. So we have to find that leg. So, of course, the first thing we need to do is label. So right angle. This is my hypotenuse, or my C, which means the other two are my legs, right? Again, it doesn't matter which one you label, A or B. So then we plug it into A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And we have A is 7 squared. B is what we're trying to find. So plus B squared equals 11 squared. All right, so let's do this. So we have 49, which is 7 squared, plus B squared equals 11 squared, which 11 squared is 121. We need to get this B squared alone. So we need to move this 49 to the other side of the equal sign. And since it's a plus 49, we subtract 49 on both sides. So that way it cancels out. Think about the river. Has this been looking familiar? Think about the river. So we have B squared equals, what's 121 minus 49? That should be 72. So just like before when we had a square, we have to get rid of it. So we take the square root of both sides. And then we'll have B alone. So find the square root of 72. Again, round to the hundredths place. So 8.49 is what I would round that to, meters. Okay. So we evaluated what 7 squared was and 11 squared. We got rid of the 7 squared by moving it to the other side, by doing the opposite operation. Then we took the square root of both sides, and that's how we got the answer. So let's do one more together. One more together. And we're almost done, I promise. All right, so we have, here's the right angle, which means that this is my hypotenuse, which means that these are my legs. And we plug it into A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, so let's start plugging things in. A squared is 8 squared. B squared we're going to leave. C squared is 21 squared. If it helps, draw the river. That's going to help you draw that out. Figure out what 8 squared is. So 8 squared is 64. And we do plus B squared equals whatever 21 squared is. So 21 squared is 441. Now again, we need to move the 64 over to the other side. So we do the opposite operation. So we subtract 64 on both sides. So what's 441 minus 64? And that's 377. And then we bring down our B squared here. Again, we can't leave that squared there. So we have to take the square root of each side. So let's find the square root of 377. And that is, when you round it to the 10th, 18.36. Oh, nope, that's wrong, Miss Myers. I did 337. The square root of 377 is 19.4. Ignore that. 19.42, I would say. And this is feet. So 19.42 feet. All right. I want you to do the next two on your own. So I want you to pause this and do the next two on your own. So do this one, and this one. And unpause when you're done. All right, so on this first one, hopefully you got 11.66 yards. Okay, and let's look at the next one then. All right, so hopefully you got 18.73 feet for this last one. So we're not going to do any more of these notes because I feel like I've held your attention for a long time. However, if you would like to do any of those, you certainly may, and then just email me asking for the answers, okay? And I'll give you those answers then. So if you want to know any of those because you give them a try, again, just let me know. All right, so good luck on this.